Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for February 13th, 2026. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday edition of the podcast, a very spooky Friday the 13th edition of the podcast, if you believe in that. More on that here in a bit. But we continue our reset from Philly sports. We're in the middle of that lull where there's not really much going on. So yesterday we talked about resetting expectations. I think this weekend is a good reset weekend, period. Watch some Olympics, watch some college basketball. All-Star Saturday night for the NBA is on tomorrow night. You have the All-Star game on Sunday. Just a good weekend to get away from it all. No talk about A.J. Brown, Nick Castellanos, Joe's knees, the Flyers being Flyers. Just like I said, just a good time to just unplug and just reset. That's what I'll be doing. It's a long President's Day weekend, so step away from Philly sports and just enjoy the scenery. All right, let's start with our Olympic spotlight. And hockey is underway. United States with a 5-1 win yesterday over Latvia. But as you're unplugging and resetting this weekend, if you happen to be watching the Olympics and there's two teams that are not of your rooting interest, because obviously we're rooting for the United States, we're rooting against Canada for obvious reasons, mostly Sidney Crosby. Here's who you can root for. So the Flyers have three representatives playing in the Olympics. Rasmus Ristolian, he is playing for Finland. Dan Vladar is playing for Czechia. And Travis Sanheim is playing for Canada. You can root for him to not get hurt, maybe score a goal, but for the Canadians to lose. But at the end of the day, it's all about the United States. So go USA, bring home the gold. Hope you enjoyed the Olympic spotlight. A lot of the people we've talked about are competing today through the rest of the weekend. So hopefully you got some rooting interest there. But the Olympics, again, are always one of those fun things that happen every now and then. We do have some Phillies news, some very interesting Phillies news. They did release Nick Castellanos. I don't know why it took this long. I think they botched this completely because they were not able to get anything, because everybody knew you were either going to release him or trade him. Well, if I know I can get him possibly from when you release him, why am I going to trade for him and have to deal with his current salary? But in an interesting move, Nick Castellanos wrote a handwritten letter thanking the fans of Philly, explained what happened in the dugout in Miami. Apparently, when he got pulled for defensive purposes, went into the clubhouse, came out with a beer. Luckily, his teammates pulled it out. But drinking a beer in the dugout might be the most Nick Castellanos thing ever. I do think there is way more to it than what we're hearing. We may never hear. But I think lost in how last year played out, and I will go on record, Nick Castellanos was a big part of this team since he got here. And looking at the playoff runs, a lot of times, like, it was frustrating, but when it was crunch time, a lot of times he was our best hitter, specifically in the postseason. A couple big postseason hits, including some homers. So I think we're going to see the swings. The fact that he said he doesn't go up there with a plan, he just goes up there to swing. The swing at the first pitch all the time. But Nick Castellanos was a big part of this team. Wish him well. I don't know if the Phillies handled this the proper way, but at this point, that's neither here nor there because we're unplugging from Philly sports for the weekend. The other thing I thought was pretty cool, they did give Aiden Miller Nick Castellanos' locker in Clearwater. So pretty cool that his locker's next to Bryce. Also pretty, and I don't, maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but it could be a telling thing that maybe they're expecting him to make the team, and possibly maybe there's another move coming down the pipe with Alec Boehm, but we'll see. Phillies full team comes in probably in a week or so, but pitchers and catchers are still there. Still can't get over the fact that Zach Wheeler held on to his rib, but hey, it is what it is, I guess. All right, some quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media on all platforms at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mon. Continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. Go catch up and check out the Brotherly Birds Breakdown with Kyle and I, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. We will be back with a new episode in a couple weeks, gearing up for free agency. And of course, we are proud members of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. Go to clashingconferences.com to see how you can join and what they have to offer. And then yesterday's trivia question, in honor of the Dadvale Regatta, I asked which school has the most heavyweight or varsity eights heavyweight titles or championships, not titles. This isn't the WWE. That would be Temple. Temple has 22 men's varsity eights titles, the most of any school. So go Owls, and thank you to everybody who participated in the trivia. I'm all right. It's Friday. It's been a long week. Trivia question yesterday.
Hey guys, guess what time it is? It's cookie season. I'm Ella here, your favorite Girl Scout, and we have your oldies but goodies. Lemonades, Dimmits, peanut butter sandwiches, and more. This year we have a new cookie flavor called the Explore Mug. My goal is 200 boxes, so please make that happen. You're going to buy cookies anyway, so why not buy them from me?
All right, sort of a mixed bag here on February 13th. First, we're going to go back to 1981. And on this day in 1981, it was a girls' Philly Public League game between Dobbins and Mastbaum. Ironically, on Friday the 13th, but history was made. Linda Page came into this game with 1,963 points in her career. Dobbins coach Tony Coma said, you know what, let's get her to 2,000. She had 53 in the first half against Mastbaum, getting to the 2,000 mark. And then at halftime, they kind of looked at it and said, she only needs 38 more to pass Wilt Chamberlain's all-time public league record of 90 points in a game. Left it up to the team. The team was like, absolutely, let's go break Wilt's record. They started cheering, break Wilt's record in the huddle. Not only did she break it, but she ended with 100 points, much like Wilt Chamberlain in an NBA game, ironically enough, in the 131-37 win. Now, Linda was definitely efficient in this game, shooting 41 for 58 and 18 for 21 from the line. But it wasn't just the scoring. She had 19 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 steals in front of a whopping 53 fans. Sad that not that many people did get to see Linda score 100 points in a public league game. She was quickly, because they played their games in the afternoon, she was quickly, showered, changed, and went down to the Sixers game that night, where she was honored at the Spectrum, getting to stand and share on the court with Dr. J. Sixers did lose that game, though. But it was all about Linda Page on this day, scoring 100 points in a public league game in Dobbins' 131-37 win over Mastbaum, breaking Wilt Chamberlain's public league record for girls and boys, who had 90 points back when he played for Overbrook. So shout out to Linda, who would go on to have a solid career in college and pros, even though there was no WNBA after that. So kudos to you, Linda. Fast forward to 1994. And man, oh man. Temple versus UMass. And I think because of the way the landscape has shifted, a lot of people tend to, obviously you still have Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, some of those rivalries, but The Temple UMass rivalry in the late 80s, early 90s, into the mid 90s, there was not a better rivalry in all of sports. I would definitely put it up there. You had Cheney versus Calipari. You had two clash, and everybody knows John Calipari's coaching and what he does recruiting wise. So you had a very clashing of styles between him and Cheney, and those two had some battles on the court. If you to me, and I know, like, obviously you have the Cowboys, the Giants, the Celtics, the Mets, the Braves, like the obvious Philly sports rivals. But for me personally, and obviously the rivalry is dead now because they're in different conferences. But for me, they're like, I hated UMass, and still to this day hate UMass just because of those rivalries growing up with Temple and John Chaney's team. I remember one time at the Liacouras Center, I think at the time it was probably the Apollo. Spending all afternoon on a Saturday. It was a Saturday night game, making a big sign. And if you remember when we were kids, or when I was a teenager, I guess, but the college game hats, they were the company was the game. They were the white hats that would always have the school and whatever on them, and everybody had them. And there was always the one that had UMass on it, and everybody would take the stitching out of the M and it would say US. The South Carolina had the ones that said Cox on it, just kind of towing that line. But I remember people would take and I hated UMass so much I wouldn't do this wouldn't spend my money on a UMass hat to even do this. But you take the stitching out of the M and your hat said US. So I was like, this is great. We had always had season tickets for Temple basketball, and the way they did it, we had the same seats. So I would make our pledges when in my fraternity start camping out like on Monday night after their pledge meeting for when tickets went on sale Friday morning. So we always had first choice. So we always took right next to the visitors bench behind the basket and had like the first three rows. So I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm going to sit there and get so much TV time with the US side. So spent all day doing it, went and bought the paint. I did it in UMass colors and spent the time tracing it out, just like the old school hats and everything. Somehow you weren't, I can't remember whether you weren't allowed to take signs in or what, but I knew some people. So I had one of the guys I knew as an usher take the sign in for him with him to work and kind of keep it to the side when we walked in. So then I'd walk in, grab the sign, quickly go to our seats. And I remember coming down the steps from behind the basket, and it was right next to the UMass bench with this huge poster board sign that said US on it, and everybody's cheering. I purposely waited till later, till closer to game time. The issue was our seats were across from the president's box, which I think at the time I think it was still Liacouras. That's why I still think it was the Apollo. So special guest of Peter Liacouras that night happened to be Linda Bruno, who was the commissioner of the Atlantic 10. Linda did not like my sign. I think I didn't even make it halfway down the aisle. Of course, I was soaking it all in. Within, like I said, halfway down the aisle, usher came up and they're like, and I knew the guy. He was like, Jimbo, you got two choices here. You can either give me the sign or you can leave. And of course, it was UMass. It was a big A-10 game, rivalry game. Bruiser Flint was coaching for UMass. So I gave up the sign. I was like, can you just do me a favor? Because I spent so much time on it. I was like, can you put it by the door and I'll take it? And he was like, I'll see what I can do. So that's my UMass story. But back to the rivalry. Didn't mean to go on a long diatribe there. But on this day in 1994, UMass got the better of Temple, 56-55, and again, they always played epic games in a stellar matchup. Aaron McKee had 20 for the Owls. Eddie Jones had it 19. But it was after the game that the fireworks started. John Chaney barged into John Calipari's press conference. He was upset about him pulling the officials aside and talking to them after the game. He felt that it should have been both of them. He also was like, what are you talking about? Like, you got a lot of good calls. You have a good team. You don't need to have the refs in your pocket. essentially speaking up for the integrity of the game. But Coach Chaney, being Coach Chaney and who he is, had to be restrained because he wanted to go after and fight John Calipari. He threatened to kill him, said, I'm going to kick your ass. Next time I see you, I'm going to kick your ass. He had to be restrained by Eddie Jones and Aaron McKee. One of the more bizarre press conferences of all time. Calipari, to his credit, just stood there and took it. But Chaney, again, we talked about it earlier this week. John Chaney stood for the right things, and his heart was in the right place, even if the delivery, sometimes those Philly roots do come out. But he was suspended for a game. But again, I chalk this up to Chaney being Chaney. But one of the funnier and more bizarre press conferences of all time happened after UMass beat Temple 56-55 on this day back in 1994. I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to kill you. All right, and then 1977, our big story of the day. It was the NBA All-Star Game. Sixers were well represented in this game. Doug Collins, George McGinnis, and Dr. J all started in this game. This was Dr. J's first NBA All-Star Game. The East was actually coached by Gene Shue. The game was played in Milwaukee. And the West, ironically enough, here's another Philly tie, was coached by Larry Brown, who was coaching the Nuggets at the time. The West beat the East 125-124. Doug Collins had 8 points and 6 assists. George McGinnis, 4 points, 7 rebounds. But Doc had 30 points and 10 rebounds, winning the MVP in a losing effort. You usually don't see that in the All-Star game. It was one of 2 All-Star game MVPs. But Dr. J took home the All-Star MVP on this day in 1977. Then moving to our Black History Month Spotlight, forged in Philly, we're going to take a look at Mike Quick. And Mike was a first-round pick in 1982 from NC State. He was a 3-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, Eagles Hall of Famer. Now works alongside the GOAT, Merle Reese, as the color commentator in the Eagles radio booth. And again, Mike is not from Philly, but his career and legacy was certainly forged here in Philly. He was tough. I remember in 1988, he battled back from that broken leg because the team was so special and really made a huge contribution down the stretch as the Eagles went on to win the NFC East that year. Suffered patella tendonitis throughout his career, which ultimately ended his career. But he was a hard worker on the field and off the field. And I think if you think back to when he took over, and maybe I'm romanticizing this a little bit because it was how I listened to Eagles games on the radio growing up, but it was Merrill Reese and Stan Walters, and I love Stan Walters. And I thought he was good, but he ended up moving to England because his wife took a job opening up the spot for Mike Quick. Mike was not the best when he first took over. We used to always joke that Mike would just say, I agree, Merle, with everything, and didn't really have takes. But if you listen to the games now, Mike is pretty damn good at what he does. And that's all due to his hard work. And again, he wasn't from Philly, but he was forged in Philly to produce on the field without noise, took hits, just went out there, did his job without complaining, and stayed connected to the city after the applause faded. And I think that's important. He works hard, he's loyal. These are all staples of the city of Philadelphia. And Mike Quick, even though he's not from here, certainly forged here and is beloved here in Philadelphia. So Mike Quick is today's Black History Spotlight, forged in Philly focus today. Great player on the field and has turned into a pretty damn good color commentator as well. So kudos to you, Mike. We love you. Also, for my money, still the best name ever for a wide receiver. That does lead into today's trivia question. It is the weekend. I like to give you a little bit more of a homework assignment over the weekend. Mike Quick, one of the greatest Eagles receivers to ever play. Who are the top 10 Eagles in receiving yards for their Eagles career? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Hit me up on the Discord channel, any of my social media. but who are the top 10 Eagles in career receiving yards?
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is Friday. That means it's time for Fridays with AI, brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. They have the best selection of Philly sports-based apparel. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery, all one word, to take 10% off of your order. All right, so when AI came by this week, there's no Philly sports. We're kind of in that reset transitional period from the end of football season. Baseball starting, March Madness is coming, the final playoff pushes for the NBA, NHL, and it's Friday the 13th. So I was like, AI, what do you got in store for us today? And you could all make the argument that Philly sports are cursed, but are we? And that's what AI wanted to talk about today. In honor of Friday the 13th, are Philly sports cursed? And of course, we all know the curse of Billy Penn when Liberty Place went up. We know like the moments from the Fog Bowl, the turf in Super Bowl 57, Joe Carter, Ty Shine coming off the bench, any Flyers Stanley Cup final appearance after 1975, Rondé Barber, all of it plays into it, the Kawhi bounce. So I was like, are we cursed? Like, it's Friday the 13th. Do we have anything to worry about here? AI broke it down and explained some of the most bizarre moments, cursed moments in Philly sports history, starting with the Fog Bowl. And AI chalked that up to nothing more than an environmental anomaly. I don't know. I still think it was cursed. Super Bowl 57, the turf. Yeah, it sucked, but AI said it was an infrastructure irregularity at the worst possible moment. Yeah, the sod father. Joe Carter, AI said, listen, it happens. They were an overachieving team who's just, their luck, the magic ran out in the most dramatic way possible. Ty Shine, and for some of you who don't know, this one is right up there with the 2002 NFC Championship game is one of the worst losses I've ever experienced live. We had high hopes of going to the Final Four that year up in Buffalo. Seton Hall, their best player, Shaheen Holloway, got hurt. Ty Shine comes off the bench and hits like 10 three-pointers to beat Temple in overtime as the 2 seed. AI explained that as just the magic of March Madness. No, that was cursed. I'm sorry. I refuse to accept AI's opinion on this one. The Flyers, all of those Stanley Cup Finals losses, just chalk it up to bad timing. All of the teams the Flyers lost to in their Stanley Cup Finals were either in the middle of dynastic runs or about to become a dynasty. So just chalked it up to bad timing. Okay, I can give you that one. And then Kawhi's bounce, AI even acknowledged, okay, you could chalk this one up maybe to simple physics, but that was pretty bad. Maybe the Sixers. AI thought the Sixers were a cursed franchise, and I don't disagree. The bounce, yeah, you could chalk that up to physics, but Ben, the fact that they can't keep Joe healthy, something legitimately is wrong there. Maybe it's an incompetent front office. Maybe it's a combination of the two. So AI's conclusion is Philly sports are not cursed. We just happen to experience the maximum drama at the maximum stakes. And we feel everything at a level of 10 out of 10 intensity. So everything that we experience feels supernatural. Maybe we just live in the most cinematic sports city in America where the highs are higher, the lows hit harder. But are we cursed? I don't know. I still think there's something to the curse. But what are your thoughts? Let's have some fun with this on a Feel Good Friday. Are Philly sports cursed, or are we just trying to put the blame on something supernatural here on Friday the 13th? That was Fridays with AI, by the way, brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. Don't forget about the trivia question. top 10 Eagles receivers in yards. On this day in 1977, Dr. J wins the MVP of the All-Star game in a losing effort for the Eastern Conference. 1994, Temple loses to UMass 56-55. John Chaney threatens to kill and kick John Calipari's ass after the game. Should have probably kicked Coach Cal's ass. That's just my opinion. And then in 1981, Linda Page scores 100 points in a girls' public league game, breaking Wilt Chamberlain's public league record of points in a game with 90 as Dobbins beat Mastbaum 131-37. And then Linda got all the accolades and went with it, getting to meet Dr. J on the court at the Sixers game. We'll be back to rewind a very bare Philly sports weekend. But once we get back, we'll start gearing up for the rest of the Sixers, Flyers seasons, as well as the start of the Phillies. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for February 13th, 2026. My name's Jim Montgomery. Don't go walking under any ladders today. Have yourselves a great weekend. Until next time, I'll see you when I see you.